know which one to choose from. But in fact, the first thing I'm going to tell you is that this is not a problem, because the very simple protocol I've told you about already overcomes this problem. And in fact, I can prove a theorem which says, double notarization can never happen. In other words, for every epoch, at most one block can ever get notarized, as long as the adversary controls less than 1/3 of the nodes. Okay. So here's the very simple proof. This cannot happen. And here's the very simple proof. In this picture, we see 2/3 people voting for the blue block, and 2/3 people have voted for the orange block. And what we want to show here is that the blue block has to be the same as the orange, right? Because it cannot be that both get notarized. Okay. So now, there are only n people in total, right? If you see the blue set and the orange set, then the intersection must contain at least 1/3 of the nodes. And remember, the adversary controls less than 1/3. And what this says is that there must be an honest guy in the intersection. And remember what I said about honest people. They are going to vote uniquely every epoch. So if that honest guy who lives in the intersection has voted for both the blue and the orange, then there is only one explanation. That is, the blue block is the same as the orange block. So that's the end of the consistency proof for every epoch. Okay, so we've ruled out the first of these problematic cases, and now I want to focus on the second one, which is slightly more interesting, that is forking. So what I will do is the following. I will use the same problematic scenario, which is what you see on the slides, and I will use this scenario to motivate two very simple fixes to the protocol I've just described. And at the end, we'll have a provably correct protocol. Okay. So now, let's look at this problematic scenario together. Okay. I see at least two issues with this example. One is that the block 2 is being skipped. So before I start, everything here is notarized. And from this point on, I'm only going to draw the notarized blocks. Okay? So the first problem I see is that block 2 is being skipped. And the second problem I see is that the block 5 is extending from 3. And it's not extending from the block 4. And that's why it's creating the fork. Okay. So the second problem is really what I want to focus on. But before that, I have to explain why we are even allowing blocks to be skipped. And this is in some sense necessary if you want to have liveness, right? Because it could be that the proposer number 2 is corrupt and he failed to propose anything. And naturally, in that case, nothing will get notarized in epoch 2. Okay, so now if we allow skipping, then what you might see is the following, that the block 5 is extending from 3 and not 4. So what could have happened in this case? Okay, so there are a couple interpretations why this might happen. And the most natural one is perhaps the following, right? So the proposer 5 may be corrupt. And even though he has seen the block number 4 notarized, he doesn't like some transaction in this block. So he wants to undo this entire block. So now he chooses to build from 3 instead. Okay. If you think about this and generalize from here, you'll realize that this can get pretty bad, right? Because a corrupt guy can just choose to extend from some really ancient block in the past. And this is problematic not only because it breaks linearity, also because what happens to all the work that has been done in the middle, right? What happens to all these notarized blocks in the middle? Right? We can't just undo all this work. Okay, so this is actually pretty easy to fix, right? This was the protocol we looked at. And the problem is that people may propose to extend from a block that's way, way in the past. And I don't want this to happen. So what I'm going to say is, honest people are going to insist on the parent block being fresh enough. And what if I see a proposal that proposes to extend from an ancient block in the past? I'm just not going to vote on this block, right? It must be a bad block. Okay. So now, to make this more concrete, I have to explain what I mean by fresh enough, right? I want to check the parent block is fresh enough. But what does this actually mean? And the most natural interpretation is the following. Suppose I've seen some block notarized, and I'm going to insist on this block being included as a prefix in the proposed block of the future. If the proposed block of the future doesn't include this notarized block I've seen as a prefix, I'm just not going to vote on it. Okay, so this is like almost there. It's almost correct. In fact, this works for consistency, but it's just a little too strong for liveness. And why is it a little too strong for liveness? Well, if you think about it, the proposal happened half a second ago. Right? So remember, each epoch is one second. The proposed phase is half a second. The voting phase is half a second, right? The proposal happened half a second ago, and I'm comparing the proposed block with my current view. But a lot could have happened in that half second, right? Maybe I've seen new notarizations in that half second. So if I'm going to hold the proposer up to this very high standard, it's very unfair to an honest proposer. And that's why we don't have liveness. Okay, so if you want to fix the liveness issue, not only do you want to be fair to the proposer, you actually also want to give the proposer a little bit of advantage. You want to compare the proposal, not with the present myself, but actually with myself just a little bit before the proposal happened. And in this way, I have time to propagate whatever I've seen to the proposer, so he can pick it up, and include it in his proposal. Okay, so this 1 second parameter is actually, it shows a trade-off, a tension between consistency and liveness. And I won't go into the details, but I want you to take my word for it, that there is actually a right parameter in the middle that gets you both consistency and liveness. Okay, so that's great, we've made some progress. And we're not there yet, but we are almost there. Okay. So there is just one last thing I have to fix about this protocol to make it correct. And to motivate this last fix, I'm going to use exactly the same scenario and exactly the same question, right? So why does block number 5 choose to extend from 3 and not number 4? Earlier we said, okay, probably the proposer 5 is correct and he doesn't like some transaction in 4. But perhaps there is another interpretation. There's an alternate world. And in this alternate world, 4 is the corrupt guy and 5 is honest. And I'm going to try to convince you how this can happen when 4 is the corrupt guy and 5 is honest. And here's a possible attack. So imagine now proposer 4 is corrupt. He divides the good guys into 2 camps, the blue camp and the orange camp. And he's going to propose the blue block to the blue camp and the orange block to the orange camp. And now people are going to vote differently. Now we have 6 people, right? So if you want 2/3 votes, you have to collect 4 votes to get a notarization. In this case, if you gather together all of the honest votes, you don't have a notarization either for the blue block or for the orange block, because we have 3 and 2. But we must not forget that this corrupt guy himself has a vote, right? And if he now decides to make a vote for the blue block, he now knows the notarization on the blue block. And this is very much to the adversary's advantage, because he's the only guy who knows the notarization on the blue block. And then now he can play it to his advantage, because he can time exactly when he releases his last vote. And then he can, control exactly who sees the notarization first. Okay, so here's how the bad guy is going to exploit this attack. So for instance, at some point, the bad guy decides to reveal the notarization on 4 to a single honest person, in this case, Spider-Man. So this may, we have already moved past the epoch 4, right? And sometime in epoch 5, he releases the notarization to Spider-Man. At this very instant, no one else has seen the notarization on 4 yet. Everyone has only seen notarizations for 1 and 3. So suppose at this very instant, everyone sees a proposal extending from 3, right? Of course, this 5 guy, he hasn't seen notarization on 4 either. That's why he's building from 3. And everyone's going to be okay with this proposal, and they're all going to vote on it. And therefore, the block 5 gets notarized, even though actually, later people find out there's also a notarization for 4. Okay. So the problem with this case is that imagine in this split of a second when Spider-Man sees the notarization on 4, if he hastily decides to confirm block number 4, he's going to be in trouble because at the end of the time, he's just going to find out that there is another fork, the 5 fork, and that is the fork surviving to the end. So in this case, actually, even though 4 has been notarized, the block hasn't stabilized yet. Okay, so now, how do we fix this problem? Very simple idea. Again, perhaps just seeing a notarization is not enough, right? It may give me some confidence that many people have seen the block, but it doesn't give me high enough confidence. I want to be more paranoid. And what is paranoid? It is not enough to say, I've seen a notarization. I want to make sure that many people have seen the notarization before I can confirm the block. And that's exactly the last modification I will talk about. And one question here is, of course I know when I've seen the notarization. How can I know when other people have seen the notarization, right? So how can I know when other people have seen the notarization? In fact, you can find evidence of it in the notarized blockchain itself. So imagine there are 2 blocks belonging to consecutive epochs, and both are notarized. In this case, 3 and 4 are both notarized. And what this tells me is the following. So remember, when I cast a vote for 4, I have to check that I have a notarization for the parent, and in this case, the parent is 3. In other words, if I see a notarization for 4, it means many honest nodes have voted for the block 4, and simultaneously they are attesting to the fact that they have all seen a notarization for 3 in their epoch 4. Okay, so now what this means is many have seen notarization for 3 in their epoch 4. And in fact, if you do the calculation, more than 1/3 honest people must have seen a notarization for 3 in their epoch 4. And this actually, you can make such an inference every time you see 2 consecutive blocks both notarized. Okay. So now, in this case, actually 3 is safe for me to output for the following reason, right? Because imagine there's some epoch after 4, let's say epoch number 5. If the 5th proposer wants to build from 1, that's going to encounter opposition because many people have seen 3 notarized in epoch 4. They're not going to be happy if the block wants to extend from 1. But if the proposer wants to extend from 3 or 4, then that may be okay. Okay, so the idea is, if many have seen the notarization, remember they're going to stick onto the block, insist upon it being included in any future proposal, and that's why that block will always be picked up by the future blockchain at the end of time. Okay, so the last simple modification is a slight modification to the finalization rule. I don't want to finalize when there's a notarization. I want to chop off some blocks at the end until I've chopped off one normal block. And what is a normal block? A normal block is a notarized block that whose parent is from exactly 1 epoch ago. So remember, like in Nakamoto or in Bitcoin's protocol, whenever I see a chain, I want to chop off the last 6 blocks because the last 6 blocks haven't stabilized yet. And here it's very similar, but it's a modification of this rule. I want to chop off from the end until at least 1 normal block has been chopped off. And the idea is just like what I said, whenever I see 2 consecutive blocks notarized, then the first of the pair must have stabilized. Okay, so this is just the entire protocol, and just a quick recap, right? The protocol is really simple. It goes in epochs. Every epoch you have propose, vote, propose, vote, propose, vote. And for vote, I just have to be a little careful to check a few nice conditions hold. Right, including checking that I've seen the parent block notarized and the parent being fresh enough. And this protocol, when combined with this paranoid finalization rule gets you a provably correct protocol. Okay, so now is the time to reveal a couple of secrets. As I said, I wanted to talk about Pili and Pala, but I didn't really talk about Pili and Pala. Right? I talked about a protocol that tolerates less than 1/3 corruption and is secure in the synchronous model. So what is Pili? Pili improves the resilience parameter to a half. It also works in the synchronous model, right? Because 1/3 is not really tight for synchrony. And Pala tries to improve robustness, but in a different dimension. It tries to tolerate arbitrary partitions by working with what's so-called the partially synchronous model. And I want to also mention another very beautiful work called Hot Stuff by Abraham et al. And there are also another instantiation of this idea in this paradigm, also in the partially synchronous model. And in fact, the protocol I talked about in this talk is partly inspired by the beautiful Hot Stuff work. Okay. So here's another secret I want to tell you at the end. What I told you about is not just an isolated protocol. It's actually a family of protocols that follow a very elegant paradigm called the pipeline BFT paradigm. And I want to explain this paradigm in just 2 sentences. Right? In classical consensus like TBFT and Paxos, every time you want to confirm a block, it takes 2 rounds of voting. If you are familiar, for instance, with TBFT, you'll know that these 2 rounds in TBFT are called the prepare round and the commit round. And well, this is not ideal because why should there be 2, right? Can we do the same thing with only a single round of voting? And the answer is yes. And it's a very, very simple but very elegant idea, right? So why don't we just piggyback the 2nd round on the next block's notarization? And if you do that, you can get this family of extremely simple consensus protocols like the one I've just talked about. And finally, I want to mention that this very elegant work, many of you know, Casper FFG. In fact, it's not explicit in their paper, but actually implicitly they're using this pipeline BFT paradigm as well. Okay, so thank you very much. And for Thunder, we have released testnet. You should try it out.